Shane Ardern.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise in support of the Government's Taxation Budget Measures Amendment Bill. Mr Speaker, I stand here today representing the Taranaki King Country electorate, an electorate that starts near Hamilton and finishes in South Taranaki. A rural electorate, Mr Speaker, a farming electorate, Mr Speaker, with a large number of dairy farmers, Mr Speaker. This is not a rich electorate. This is not a rich electorate. Made up of small towns up and down the electorate, 17 of them, that support the rural electorate, and we support them, the farming sector. I stand here, Mr Speaker, as a dairy farmer, and I say to that Labor government over there, I know what my tax is, I know what we pay, and I despise the way they've misrepresented it over the last few days. And there's one thing, Mr Speaker, one thing that the rural electorates know how to do, and it's when you have tough times, it's hunker down and find out what works, look at what works, pay the bills on the areas that are essential and not pay the bills on the things that are not essential. Look at where you can make a cut. That is why I am proud to be part of the national government. I am proud of a government led by John Key that has looked at what circumstances face New Zealand at the moment and looked at what we can do to bring about an increase in economic activity, in growth. And I can tell the members on the other side of the House what it isn't, and that is tax the productive sector. Tax the productive sector and take the taxes from the productive sector and spend them on non-productive activity. That is their answer. That's their solution to the way forward. That is what the Labor opposition put up. And I have one question to the Labor opposition, and it's this. I've heard over many speeches in this House that the agriculture sector, and particularly the dairy industry, is supposedly the backbone of this country. Supposedly. So what does that mean? What does the word supposedly mean, Mr Speaker? Does it mean that it may be, or it could be, or it might be? Because if it isn't, what is? If it isn't, what is? And the question I put to those members on the other side of the House, maybe it's the black market that the trade unions support openly and regularly. Maybe it's the underground, non-taxable income that is so often supported and turned a blind eye on by those members on the other side of the House. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the activity of the trade unions. Or maybe it's the activity of the Labor Party. If the agriculture sector is not the backbone of this economy, what is? What is? No, supposedly, it is black and white, and there is no doubt about it. So why, then, would you use such distorted figures? And the only reason that I can suggest to you, Mr Speaker, they'd do that is because they intend to attack the very productive base that this economy depends on. I have a question for them, and it's this. I'm a dairy farmer, I'm never going to back away from that, and I'm a shareholder of Fonterra, a small cooperative, a small farmer cooperative, a small by international standards farmer cooperative. Big in New Zealand, small by international standards. When the Christchurch earthquake had struck, who was the first one there? Who was the first one there? With tag a load of water. Who was? Who was the first one there? And then just ask this question. Ask this question. Who put the money in? Who put the money in? How much money did Mr Little write out for the earthquake? What was the cheque from the trade union movement? Righto, so they can't afford it. They'll say they can't afford it. So where were they when they needed the soldiers on the street cleaning up? Who turned up for that? The Whāmiane and the students. Not the trade union movement, no. They were the ones sitting in the houses and looking out at the workers there. So this childish, shallow, vindictive attack on the farming sector, the very sector, the New Zealand
point
sector.
Of order. Clayton Cosgrove.
I respect the member. I don't wish to interrupt him, but I just simply ask for your advice. I know this is a very wide-ranging debate, and we have rode reasonably wide, but Whāmiane, Student Army, earthquake, this is a tax bill, sir, and the member might want to come back to it. And throwing accusations about black markets and people being involved in that, I don't think it's helpful.
Yeah, I take the member. I think if I was going to be overly critical on this point, I would have raised this matter at other times during the succession of debates on this matter, and it's probably stretching things a bit, but has he gone further than other members? I'm not sure. My preference certainly would be for members to debate specifically. Shane Arden.
Well, thank you for that, Mr Speaker, because the member has given me such a wonderful opportunity that I don't know where to start. In the budget, there was $5.5 billion going to the Christchurch earthquake repair. The member would have missed that, I'm sure. He would not have seen that. It'd be on the second or third page, and he never read past the front page that the Labour Research Unit gave him. $5.5 billion going into a town that was devastated, and so it should, from a national government. But here's the irony. Here is the irony. Most of the Christchurch seats are held by Labour. A Labour town. A Labour town. And the national government's putting $5.5 billion, and so they should, and we don't resent a single cent of it. So they should. So, getting back to the points that I was making, the Labour members have this notion, Mr Speaker, that you can get this economy back on track by going out, once again, identifying a group of people that are entrepreneurs and successful, not the losers on the other side of the house, not the vindictive haters and wreckers on the other side of the house, but people that are successful, people that work hard and strive to achieve, and attacking them. And I just say this to them. So the Labour Party's alternative budget is to tax farmers more, and that will solve the problem. And that will solve the problem. That will solve the problem. Well, I'll tell you what, that's the next TUI board. Mr Speaker, that's the next TUI board. Tax farmers more, and that will fix the economy. That is what they have said in the last few days. The next TUI board, and you know what they say to that? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Shame on you. Shame on your Labour colleagues. You have decided to shift the limelight from the fact that you have no alternatives, nothing to offer, shallow, completely without any substance at all, onto a group of hard-working, dedicated individuals that are paying their taxes, are good citizens, good community people, and you should be ashamed of yourself. That's all I can say. Now, to the Green Party, who also have put up no credible alternative. Dr Russell Norman, sailing up and down rivers all over the country, talking about the state of pollution up and down the country, particularly blaming a particular industry. I invite him to actually row his canoe down the Avon. Row it down the Avon. Oh, it's okay, of course it's different. Of course it's different. There's no cows anywhere around the Avon. It can't be polluted because there's no cows there. It's the most toxic waterway in the country, next to the Viaduct Basin in Auckland, of course, where you'd have to go a long way to find some cows again. So, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. And the Nick Smith, the Honourable David Carter and the Honourable Nick Smith have done more to correct the situation in terms of cleaning up waterways with the recent announcements that this government has made, Mr Speaker, than any Labour Party have ever done. See, Labour and the Greens talk about the environment, but they actually don't do anything about it, Mr Speaker. So, Mr Speaker, in closing, this is a good budget. This is the right position to go to. Mr Speaker, I am a farmer. I live in an electorate that is made up of farming. I share the highs and lows. I know when they're hurting. I know when they're not paying tax because they haven't made any money, but they've made a loss. And I know when they do make a good profit, they pay an enormous, or their share of the tax. And I just say to those members over there, I know what their vision for the future is. I know what their vision for the future is. You need go no further than the small community I live in, where there used to be a small school that had 4 duxes and 4 different high schools in every district, in the 4 different duxes, 4 different high schools in the electorate, and now you go there and it looks like a third world derelict. That's their future for the rural community. They closed that school despite the fact that 75% of the operational grant was going into curriculum. They closed that school. And when you look at it now, it's a disgrace. And that's the legacy, and that's the vision, that the Labour Party have for New Zealand. It's bankrupt, They are bankrupt, they're losers, they're haters, they're wreckers and they're muppets.